Welcome to the Root of Power podcast, where I teach you how to chase your joy, find alignment, and create a life and a business that you love, using actionable methods, interviews, and inspiring stories from people who know that true freedom is found within. I'm your host, your always hype woman and sometimes ass kicker, Amanda Chills, and I am so proud of you for choosing to step into your power. Come along, we've got dreams to build. Okay, my love, I have put everything that I offer for free on one page so that we are not doing more work than we have to, because why would we do that? Hashtag work smarter, not harder. So livemyhappyhealth.com/free. You are going to find everything I've created for not only leveling up in your personal life and building a life that you love, but leveling up in your business life and building a business that you love. Okay? livemyhappyhealth.com/free. Love you. Hello, Root of Power fam. We have got Philippa Robinson with us this morning or afternoon or nighttime, depending on when you're listening to this, who is a coach, author, podcaster. She was a lawyer. She's going to talk to us about how she switched out of that. And she went through a mental breakthrough and decided to realign some things in her life. And she works with self-acceptance. She works with self-compassion, which y'all know are some of my favorite topics. So apparently my cat also likes those topics. Hello and welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. So if you will just start by telling us how you got to be where you are.
Where I am, yeah, good question. Where am I as well? Yeah, so I followed the normal path at school, or normal path here for the UK. You know, do all your exams, go off to university, and I went to do a law degree because I didn't know what else to do. So I thought, okay, I'll go and do a law degree. Maybe that will lead me into something. And at the time I was there in the late 80s, law firms were still going to universities to, you know, some of the bigger some universities they would go to and interview people while they were still having their law degree. So basically, by the time I left university, I had a job to go to at a big London law firm. And I was like, okay, I mean, all right. Why wouldn't I? I didn't have a desperate calling to do anything else, and there I stayed in the law for 27 years. Wow. Not liking it a lot of the time, hating it some of the time, and very occasionally thinking it was sort of okay. So and I think partly, I mean, over the years I've always been very I could do this and I could do that, and but never really having a calling to do something else, just knowing I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And when I had my, as you called it, which is much better, breakthrough in 2017, I went to therapy. And we'll probably get onto why in a moment. I went to therapy, and, you know, after 3 years of therapy, I was changed. You know, that's what therapy will do for you, and that's why I went. I wanted ideally to be changed. Yeah. And I couldn't really do it anymore. I went back to the firm that I was working for. By then I wasn't actually a practicing lawyer. I was on the management team, and I was the risk and compliance officer, which sounds really boring. I actually quite enjoyed it. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. But I went to them and said, look, you know, as well as doing the risk and compliance, actually I am the go-to for people who've got, you know, just need to talk things through. Need support, be it career, be it home, be it whatever, but there's somebody to talk to. And I would like to make that role more official, because I knew the benefit I'd got from talking. I also totally appreciated how little support I'd had during my life. That was as a result of therapy. And I wanted to be that support for the people I was working for. And they just went, we have no idea what you're talking about. We definitely don't need, we definitely don't need that here.
How high are the suicide rates for lawyers?
Well, certainly the addiction levels are very high. I'm not sure about the suicide rates, but you know,
it is higher than average.
It is high pressure. It is not, you know, I've worked in all sorts of firms all around the country over the years, big, small, in cities, not so much provincial, but in cities, you know, and never really experienced great support. Anyway, when they said no, I just decided I couldn't stay. I just thought, I can't work in a firm that doesn't see the benefit of looking after their staff. So I left. And I left without a plan. I worked for them for 6 months, 6 months notice, while they found somebody else. In the end, I found them my replacement. And, you know, and I really did think that they would come round, and they didn't. And I was really gutted. If I'm completely honest, I was really gutted. And I'd been with them since they started. I'd been with them for very close when they started. I'd seen them build it up. I really felt part of the family in a way. And then I realized there was no family, and it was like, you are, you know, dispensable. So off I went. Had a little bit of a hard time getting my head around that for 2 or 3 months. And then when I knew I had to do something about it, we went into lockdown. COVID hit, and I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? I tentatively had sort of thought about jobs in law firms and wasn't getting any bites, luckily, because actually I might well have gone back to that if I had got bites then. And I decided to follow what my heart was telling me for a change, rather than my head. You know, my head had led me very much along an unhappy path, and my heart was does. Yeah, exactly. And my heart was telling me that, you know, people were much more of my thing than I'd realised. And a lot of people said to me, well, you know, what about coaching? Because that's kind of, I'd always fallen into that.
Kind of what you had wanted to do,
Yeah, and I kind of have always fallen into that role over the years. People will always come and talk to me. So I got a qualification, I got a certification, built a website, and pressed publish, thinking, now great things will happen. And of course it doesn't.
Surprise, running a business is much harder.
It is much. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, apart from making the decision to go to therapy. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Let's hope it turns out to be one of the best as well. And therein started my journey 2 years ago of starting my own business online. And thank God I'd been to therapy, because there is nothing like starting your own business to trigger all your wounds, really.
I say that all the time.
But I am so glad I did it. So glad. I'm so glad I'm out of the law.
And you know, when things are just not for you, like, you can talk yourself out of moving and adjusting, but that doesn't mean that it makes it right for you. Like, I tell people, like, a really good barometer for if you're doing the right thing is how often you have to talk yourself in it. If you are constantly having to justify a decision, that's the wrong decision. It just is, because you wouldn't have to justify it all the time so hard if it were the right decision.
And if people question your decision and you feel uncomfortable answering it, or even feel like you have to justify it, if you can't just sit in it nicely and go, this is what I'm doing, then maybe it's the wrong decision. Maybe you're going about it the wrong way. Maybe actually they're the wrong people.
Examining, like,
and maybe they're the wrong
people. It's like people don't know how to, I call it die on a hill. Like, they don't know how to die on a hill. You know what I mean? They're not like, they don't know how to stand firm in their belief and in their decisions. So for people like that, if people are questioning because they're naturally like not confident in their decisions enough, they're like, oh, maybe I am doing the wrong thing. I don't know. And it's like, oh, listen, if you think it's the right thing until somebody questions you, that may be a different problem. if you're having to justify all that, well, I stayed because da 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 da, and nobody even asks you, like you're just justifying it to yourself all the time.
Yeah.
We may want to examine your decisions. How was it? So I have been very lucky in that I've never had a job for a long time that was wrong for me.
Right.
I had to have multiple steps until entrepreneurship because I had to get licensed first. So like I had to work while I was in school, jobs that like weren't obviously my ideal job. And I had to like work for like other like clinics while I was working on getting fully licensed and those things. And those were actually great jobs. They weren't for me, but they were great. They were very, very helpful and they had their place.
Yeah.
But I'm not like, I was really lucky and like, I didn't spend 17 years in a career that really didn't like.
Yeah.
So how did you come to terms with that? Because I can imagine there was some thoughts and feelings about like wasted time or, oh my God, like like you did that, right? You chose to stay for almost 20 years in a job that you didn't like. And what I find is a lot of people, two thoughts. A lot of people get really, really stressed out about finding their passion. And it's like, okay, yes, we want to do that, but like you can just do things that you enjoy and ta-da, it leads you to your passion.
Yeah.
And two, a lot of people also, maybe it's just a US thing, but I suspect it may be over there as well. Like in the US, a lot of our jobs become our identities. So people are like, well, I have to love my job. And it's like, well, not necessarily. Like you can like your job. And if it gives you the other things that you want, the money you want, the freedom you want, the vacation time that you want, a schedule that you really like, you like the people you work with, like that can also be enough. So I don't want to sound like you have to love your job or you're wrong, because that's not true. But I think if you like really hate your job, if you're just like, God, this is soul sucking, there's always another option.
There is always another option, but I think it's often hard to see it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I was. I ended up doing law and ended up being a lawyer, partly because of growing up in the chaos that I grew up in. I didn't feel safe, and I knew that really I was going to have to look after myself as an adult.
Yeah.
So I went into the law because that was sort of the path that was unfolding in front of me, but also so it was easier to stay on it in a way than jump off it. And I didn't have a desire to jump off it for anything in particular. And unless I did something really bad, I probably had a job for life.
Yeah, and security is important.
And security. And I think you're right to some extent. You are absolutely right. And to some extent, it applies to me that it's also partly identity as well. Because I didn't really feel that I had an identity. So that was part of my problem when I left my job in 2019 as well, that it was like, okay.
Oh, shit, who am I now?
Yeah. And that actually was the big thing, leaving therapy and having worked through all that childhood stuff and then getting to a point of like leaving my job. It was very much, actually, who am I now? So working that out was very tricky. But partly what kept me in the law was I only had myself to rely on. I couldn't rely on my parents. I'd had a string of disastrous relationships because of my inability to have a proper relationship because of the patterns I'd brought from my childhood. So, it was just me. And I think I was too, is frightened the right word? I was too frightened. Possibly it was frightened to look at options. I mean, now I can see there was probably all manner of options, but I didn't, I wasn't brave enough, I don't think, to take them.
And I thank you for saying that, because that's it, right? Like, I can't tell you how many, everyone I work with in trauma, bravery is a skill. Like, courage isn't, or maybe one of them is inherent. Maybe courage is inherent, but bravery is a skill. One of them. But they're both skills. Like, thank you, Kitty, to be afraid and to do things anyway is a skill set.
Yes.
And people beat themselves up for not being able to do it. And I'll put that in quotes, like, because they don't know how. It's literally just a set of skills. And trauma does that. Like, trauma rewires your brain so that you have a much stronger safety response. So you don't, like, people who go through trauma, who had childhood abuse, who were in domestic violence relationships or abusive relationships, like, they don't do things that take as much courage unless they, like, you know, go to therapy, work through that. But because the consequences were literally life or death. If every time I stepped out of line, my life was in danger, well, guess what I stopped doing?
Exactly.
I stopped stepping out of line. If every time I spoke up, I got my ass beat, guess what I stopped doing?
Exactly. And
that's a survival.
Yeah. And, you know, growing up in situations like that, I mean, you know, I grew up with an alcoholic mother and then all sorts of chaos unfolded. Yeah. You don't grow up sort of with that stable, like, stable grounding that, you know, there are people who are there for you and you can, and are encouraging you to take risks in a way, small, you know, age appropriate risks as you get older, you know, to know that to learn the things that you can do and to learn that skill of putting yourself maybe in an uncomfortable situation and knowing that somebody's got you if you fall, but actually giving it a go. I didn't really learn any of that. I just sort of kept my head down until I left home at 18 and then never really went back. And so I was then catapulted into the world without those skills. And actually the world was quite a scary place at that stage. And then I went and threw myself into a high stress career. So I never really learned any of how to have joy, how to do things that I enjoy, how to understand who I am and what makes me tick. I just didn't know any
Which
of
then
that.
goes into bigger things like how to make decisions.
Yeah.
I can tell with literally one question if people were listened to as children.
Right.
Immediately. And I say, what do you want to eat?
Ooh, well, what do I want to
Try
eat?
it. If they cannot answer that question, not if they're like, oh, you know, I'm not really sure. If they're like, hi, I don't know. I don't know. What do you want? And I'm like, oh, okay.
So the people who can't choose off a menu for like,
who never listened to.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting.
They were never listened to.
Never heard.
So you never learn your voice, right?
Yes.
So then you fast forward that into a few years. You don't know how to pick a job.
No.
You don't know how to pick a career. You don't know how to pick a partner because you can't make decisions like what to eat for dinner.
Yes.
So how are you going to make bigger decisions like what kind of person do I want to date?
Yeah.
Yes, Kitty, I hear
you.
Yeah.
And yes, because when I met my now husband, I was well into my 30s, and he couldn't believe that I'd never bought a property. You know, owning your own property is like, you know, you must do it. You must
it's like religion in the US.
Must get on the property ladder and all that. And he couldn't believe, and by then I'd lived in some I'd lived in some places that were up and coming when I was there. And if I'd bought when I'd lived there, you know, I would have made lots of money each time. And in fact, I just rented all this time. And he couldn't believe it. And it was never something that was on my radar. I was quite happy renting so that when I wanted to move on, I could just hand the keys back and leave. Because I had a series of jobs. It was a bit of a joke, really. I moved job every 18, 24 months, really, because I found it easy to get a job. So I was lucky, but I was always moving, looking for something else. And then in therapy, I learned that the thing I was looking for, or the thing I was running away from, was me. So I was never going to outrun myself. So learning to love myself and accept everything that had gone before and be very compassionate to myself about all that is what has allowed me to now take some risks and do that in a really grounded way, I think.
What did that practice look like for you? Like, I know you said you did therapy, but like in practice, what did it look like? Did it look like were you journaling a lot? Were you, what were some things that you did that were helpful?
Yeah, so I kind of think of it as in two stages. There was the 3 years that I was actually in therapy, so I went to weekly therapy, and then there's probably the 3 years since where I've done a lot of the other stuff. So whilst I was actually in therapy, I mean, the first thing, which was probably the hardest thing, really, she made me think about what is it that I like doing. So she said to me, so, you know, what do you like doing for yourself? What do you like doing for yourself?
And you're like, I
was like, what?
Like,
I was the ultimate people pleaser. Of course I was. It's completely logical, given my upbringing, that I would have been a people pleaser. And, you know, I always used to say, as long as the kids are happy, my husband's happy, my friends are happy, I'm happy to just go along.
It's such a lie.
Yeah. Well,
that's such a lie. You are happy, but not really.
Well, and I think when you don't know what really happy is, it seems like you're happy.
Yeah.
You're happy to go with the flow. But yes, you know, I always got put in the role of the organizer, and I always used to organize everything. And actually I was quite resentful about that. Like, why can't somebody else do it for once? So the first thing was I had to learn to do things that, like, what did I enjoy doing? What did I want? What did I need? And learn to make sure I got those things. That was really hard.
Yeah.
But little by little, by doing, like, you know, going, okay, I'm going to do this today. Actually, the world didn't stop turning, and you know, my world didn't come crashing down around my ears. And in fact, I was much happier. And the ripple effect is that everybody around me became much happier, because the atmosphere just gradually, you know, at home became much calmer, because it certainly wasn't calm before I ended up in therapy, which is why I ended up there anyway, because I was just suppressing my feelings for so many years. You know, we all know now that you can't suppress it forever, and it comes out, and the volcano erupted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love that you make that point. So I actually just launched a course for people pleasers, and everything you're saying is exactly why I did it.
Yep.
Because it is a set of skills that, like, people literally don't know. But when you carry that inner turmoil, like, it's so heavy, and you don't even realize until you start getting some distance perspective how much pressure, how much stress, how much chaos, how much animosity, how much resentment it puts into your relationships. Because you may be like, well, as long as everyone's happy, I'm happy. But then you're mad the whole time trying to make everyone else happy. And it's like, and then it's this never ending cycle, because you think, when they're happy, I'll be happy. When they're happy, I'll be happy. But people's happiness shifts all the time. So you're constantly shifting, and it's like so exhausting.
Absolutely. The number of times I've said to everybody, I'm spending all my time doing all this for you lot, and you haven't even got the good grace to be happy about it. You know, and that really didn't register with me until I went to therapy and realized that I am putting my happiness in everybody else's hands.
Right.
I'm manipulating them, really. I am saying to them, I'm going to do all this for you, and I want you to behave in a certain way that makes me feel good about doing all this.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't know it was manipulation at the time, but I can totally see that it is now.
And people don't, right? And when you don't have your needs met in a healthy way, you find a way to get them met. Like, that is just the adaptability of humans.
Yep.
But humans are very creative little gremlins with those things. So So we healed all that, and it sounds like a rising tide lifts all boats. So like everyone around you also became happier, and like it just puts so much less pressure on relationships, which is beautiful. And so what are some of the things that you like discovered that you like? Apparently lawyering, not one of them. So we got rid of that one.
Lawyering is definitely not one of them. You're absolutely right. I never really thought of myself as a people person, but realize I am. I discovered also, like, once I feel like it's like scraping away the layer of the childhood trauma. Not that it ever totally goes away.
That's a good analogy.
But scraping that layer, it's kind of like, who am I underneath? And one of the things I discovered about myself is that I'm an HSP. I'm a highly sensitive person, and I realized that my experience of like the world, when I often wondered why I react differently to some people in situations, and I thought that I was perhaps broken in some way, which was why I would either be much more upset about things, or I'd feel things more deeply, or I'd be more bothered by loud noises and horrible smells and all of these things. I actually realized that that's because I am literally having a different experience. I'm taking more information in. I'm taking it in more deeply. And that really helped me. It really helped me understand that I am actually having a different experience. So I'm not expecting everybody then to understand what I'm talking about. Also, it made me realize that there's partly what makes me a good coach, because I can feel energy in my clients, and I can work out when we're on the right path. I can sort of help them work out for themselves what's blocking them. And, so that has helped me really love what I do as well. The other thing I've really discovered, I like writing. I used to be as well. I was good at maths at school and got pushed down the math route, but actually I do remember enjoying English and writing as well. And last year I wrote a book. So I wrote, when I left therapy, I decided I wanted to write a book, write it all down. I was going to write a self-help type book, but the book coach I worked with encouraged me to write my whole story, because she persuaded me there was I can't even think of the word. It was worth writing it because it might help other people.
So I really like the phrase, your journey will become somebody else's roadmap.
Yeah, I like that. And a few people who've read, people have read it, have said, actually they can really, while their story might be very different, they can resonate with a lot that I say. So I really enjoy doing that. So I now write more. I write regularly. I write articles that I publish on Medium. So I really like writing. So I try and make sure I've got time to do that. I have a podcast as well, and I really like doing that. I like talking.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Like, you just get to talk to people who you like. If you do interviews, you just get to, like, you and I would never have connected without podcasting.
No, absolutely. And I've connected with so many wonderful people since doing the podcast, which is great. And then now guesting on other people's podcasts. So, here with you. Thank you. And the other thing I really am into at the moment is swimming, but cold water swimming. So
like in the ocean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is quite cold here. So it's the benefit. I love being in the water. I remember, I was a real water baby when I was a kid. My inner child has a field day when we go in the ocean. But also it's really quite cold, and the benefits from being in cold water. So I'm really enjoying that. And what with that?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
Oh, I was going to ask if you read Blue Mind by Wallace Nichols.
I haven't.
Oh, you would love it. It's so good. So for anyone who's interested, he digs into the biology and psychology of why humans and how our brains respond to water.
Ah.
And it is fascinating.
Okay.
Like, fascinating. So he talks about how our brains are wired for water, why that happens, how our brain responds. He digs into like studies with like stress and trauma and like water therapies. Like it is a very, very good book if you are interested at all in that.
I
was reading it and I was like, I'm going to buy a beach house and run retreats.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Yes.
Listen, life dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. That would be my dream, to live by the sea. But I don't. Yeah. But there is water close enough that I can get in it anyway, even if it's not like beautiful, but all in good time. Yeah. So yeah. And the other thing that I now find sort of happened quite naturally is finding the joy in those everyday little moments. So not waiting for the big moments, making sure that my day, making sure I'm available actually to witness those moments of joy.
I love that
arrive, and that could just be a really good cup of coffee, or watching my dog having a great time when we're out for a walk, the sun on my face. I actually
find that is one of the biggest secrets, hacks, levers, maybe. Like that's one of the biggest levers you can pull, is to just notice the things that already exist that are wonderful. Like I can't tell you, I have a cat and a dog. I also live on a farm, so we have a lot of other animals too. Okay. That the amount of times a day where I look at my cat and I'm just like, you're so cute, I could die. And like our goats get out every day because they're gremlins.
Yeah.
And I could like be pissed off about it every day, or I could just laugh and be like, go home. You know where you're going. Like, here we go again. So I can like, that's a choice, right? Like you can choose to be in wonder all the time at your life, or you can choose to focus on the things that annoy you. But why would you do that when the other option is so much, like it feels so much better to not be angry all the time?
I totally agree with you. And maybe you have to be angry all the time to then appreciate maybe not being.
Oh, why? Well, like, why? Appreciation is a choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's about, it's the similar thing to think when, people have a tendency to concentrate on what they haven't got, as opposed to, appreciating what they have got. And it's the same thing, isn't it? But noticing those everyday little moments is what has totally changed my life.
Yeah. And that is like all of the things are simple, but not all of them are easy. Like that's a very simple thing, to just look around and go, what's good? Like we have birds, right? So we live on a farm and I freaking love birds. I think they are the funniest things to watch. And I get to watch birds all day long. And we have turkeys who are like ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever like really interacted with turkeys. They're tiny T-Rex. Like nobody can convince me that T-Rex were not giant birds. I will die on that hill. Like, and so every time they run, they have these like giant quads and they have to like waddle because they're so big. And it is like the funniest thing to me. And I'm just like, this is the best thing. Like, I just get to laugh at my silly animals all day long and do work I love. And it's like that process, once you get it, is very simple. Like the process to doing things you love, to being happy, to being in really fulfilling relationships is very, very simple. Doesn't make it easy, but the process is quite simple. And once people get it, which I'm sure in your coaching is the same thing, right? You end up teaching the same processes over and over, and the process is simple. And once people get that traction, it's like, oh my gosh, they're running and everything gets so much better.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the blocks and the story they're bringing with them that sort of, that's the beginning bit, isn't it? And then, as you say, when you get running with this is how life can be. And if this is what you want, this is kind of, this is what you do, sort of thing.
Like and it all looks different. Shit you love. Don't do shit you don't.
Exactly.
Like, that process is simple, but it's very hard to implement.
It is. You're absolutely right. And it looks different for everybody, of course.
Yes.
But as you say, the general principle or the general process is the same, but achieving it is where you need some support at times to kind of stick to it.
I agree. I really think like whether people get it in a podcast or like, you know, in a book or in a coach or in a therapist, like it's so much easier when someone is like, hey, here's how to do this. It's like, I'm not going to build my first house without hiring a contractor. I could, I guess, but it wouldn't be a very good house. Like it would suck. It would probably, I would build the world's, it would be the worst house. Okay. So like, I'm going to hire a professional and it just makes life so much easier because not necessarily that it's like, I had this process. You should do this process. That's not what good coaches should not do that. But it's, hey, here's the framework. Here's the structure. Fill in your personal, individual needs, wants, likes, whatever, but fit them in this framework. It's like when you have tomatoes that grow on a trellis, well, that's how they're supposed to grow. Like they need that structure to grow. But if you don't have that, the tomatoes don't grow very well. Listen to me like a gardener. I've never grown tomatoes, but I know they need a trellis.
You sound like an expert then.
I know. I sound very knowledgeable about tomatoes. You do. I'm not. But I know they need a trellis. So like without that structure, they can't grow appropriately. And that is what ideally coaching, or like if you're a business owner, a consultant, yeah, that's the word, like a consultant provides, is the structure so you can grow in your own way, but you have this structure to grow on. So that ended up being a pretty good analogy.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I like that. You should
we're working that this morning. Yeah, because I'm tired as hell, but here we are.
Okay, well, maybe that's the secret, doing
maybe that's
recording early.
Yeah, your girl did not sleep well last night, but c'est la vie.
Yes.
Here we are partying. So when you work with people, do you do one-on-one? Do you have a course? Do you run a group? Like how do you like to run it?
Well, I'm still, in the early days, I'm still doing a bit of this and a bit of that. So I've done, I think what most people do is start off doing a one-off. I mean, yes, working one-to-one, I would happily do one-off sessions, and then soon realize I didn't enjoy one-off sessions because I like the connection.
Find they're not helpful. Because like if I'm going to open a can of worms, I better help you close it.
Well, you've got to be very careful, haven't you, what you open. You can only work at quite a shallow depth if you're only doing a one-off session, and that is not what that doesn't
and then it's
light me up. No.
Yeah.
So I am now in a place where I'm doing I do some one-to-one, but that's 3 months minimum, ideally longer than that. But with most of my clients, they've already had therapy, so they're coming to me having had therapy, but then want to look forward and want to want something different.
Yeah, I think coaching is a great step down from therapy because they are different. Like therapy is the deep end of the pool and coaching is the shallow end of the pool. So like you need both. Like really after therapy, I find it's very helpful for people to step into coaching to say like, okay, so all that is clear. Now what?
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. That's exciting.
Yeah. And, I part trained as a counsellor and then decided not to carry on with that because I realised I didn't want to be down in the deep end all the time. I actually, I think where my skills lie is helping people sort of move forward after they've done all that deep work. So what I really love doing is a course that I run online, and I have women who join me from all over the place, and we have set things that we look at each week, and it's a 12-week thing, and that's actually my favorite thing to do. I'm starting doing some in-person workshops a little bit around where I live, just because I like that. I do like being in the room with people. Give me a room full of people any day. They are so fun. As long as they're not boring. Sometimes I tell everyone if I'm teaching in front of a group, I'm like, this is way more fun for you and for me if you interact. If not, it's just very awkward. Yes. So I'm like, please interact with me. And I usually get a pretty good group. And I tend to bring my dog. So she breaks the ice really well. Yeah. Yeah. Good. good tip.
So people love the dogs.
Yeah, of course they do. And I'm also facilitating some HSPs actually, which I really enjoy because they're a sort of completely different bunch of people to work with. So I'm kind of doing a bit of this and a bit of that, which actually suits me.
Which is cool because you get to do what you want, right?
And I get bored quite easily.
So I think that's the hallmark of many entrepreneurs is it's like, I'm bored now. Like I was just talking. So I do therapy full time and then I do the online courses and the podcasting. Yeah. And I've been mulling around wanting to do a biscuit shop, not like biscuits like cookies like you guys do, biscuits like the Southern biscuits.
Right.
I don't know if you guys have a different name for them.
I don't know. I'm not sure I know what they are.
So they're big. I'm not going to repeat the word biscuit again. So they're big. I'm like, they're like a big fluffy biscuit. You're like, what is that, Amanda? So it's a fluffy, if you imagine like a cupcake consistency.
Yes.
But flakier. So it's like a very flaky, you'll have to Google it, but just Google like Southern biscuit and it will definitely come up for you. So anyway, I have wanted to do like a biscuit shop for a while. And I was talking to my sister about it. And I was like, I'm not like bored with therapy. I love what I do, but my brain follows fun.
Yes.
Like that's just how I like go through life. And I'm like, it would be so fun to do this like biscuit shop. So I have like a running list of names that are all ridiculous and I'm excited about them. But it's nice when you do your own thing, when you find your North Star, you get to just follow it and then ta-da, you're living your purpose. Because your life is always aligned with whatever your North Star is. If it's helping people, if it's providing for your family, if it's travel, if it's fun, if it's giving back, like whatever your North Star is, if you're just making decisions in alignment with that, your whole life is now a life of purpose, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree with you. And you said earlier, actually, that there is this sort of like, I must find my purpose. And I think that, and I don't think anybody finds their purpose out of the pressure of I must find my purpose. I think it's like you say, you try, if you have the opportunity to try a bit of this and try this and try that and experience this and maybe volunteer at this and try things out, you'll go, oh, okay, I really like that, or I like that about that, and I like that about that. So my ideal job is actually something that gives me a bit of all of this. And actually not everybody finds their ideal job, but like you say,
100%.
Sometimes the job is just to earn money so that you get to live your ideal life away from your job.
Yeah. And I think the idea that like you have to love your job is very toxic. And I've seen it be really toxic for people like, and it doesn't like, it literally just, you don't have to love your job. I mean, you ideally shouldn't hate your job, but like there's also, and there's a phrase I use all the time, like there's nothing wrong with biding time. So if you have to be in a job that you hate for now, while you work towards a job that you like or a business that you like or whatever, there's nothing wrong with biding time.
No.
Do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. But as long as like the next step brings you closer, great.
Yeah. And even if you don't know what it's bringing you closer to, I think it's tough when you're in a job that you don't particularly like, you don't know where it's leading to, and you get stuck there and feel like you can't get out.
Yeah,
that's a pretty miserable place to be. So I would always say, how can you get out? Just get out. Just do something different. Yeah.
Especially now with like, listen, employees have some of the most bargaining power now that they have ever had. Ever. I'm like, go work fast food for $15 an hour. Okay. If that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like, okay, go do that. Do literally anything else that also pays your bills. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you.
I love that. How do people find you?
So I have a podcast called Meeting of Minds. That's a good place to listen to what I'm about. If anybody's interested, I mainly talk about all the things that I've learned over the last 5 years because I was totally clueless until then. And I have a website if anybody wants to check me out. It's safeandsupported.co.uk.
That's a good name.
Yeah, thank you. Well, those safe and supported mean a lot to me. So hence, you know. But yeah, there's a contact button on there. I'd love people to get in touch if they just want to say hi, that they heard me on here, and that would be great.
Yeah. So if people forget everything that we said,
yeah,
and they only remember this next thing you're going to say,
yeah,
what would it be?
I think it has to be, it's never too late. It's never too late to make a change. It's never too late to live a life that makes your heart and soul sing.
Damn, that was good.
Thanks.
That was good. I like it.
It's never too late.
Philippa, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.